Welcome everyone. This is week 12 life lesson, and we're going to be looking at the topics that were treated during the week so we can have more understanding on the different topics. Now, for this week we learned how to use the different entities and symbols in HTML. And also we looked at counters, how to use counters, iframes, how to upload videos and audios in our page, and also specificity and the different units we have in HTML. All right. First, we are going to create content for that we're going to use to illustrate all these topics. So we're going to have content that we can use to understand these topics in a different way, other than the way it was taught in the class lesson, so we can have more understanding. So to begin with, the HTML entities and symbols, they are used to display reserved characters in HTML. It's also used to display symbols and special characters that are not on the keyboard. For example, now we're going to look at the list of different symbols and entities, and we're also going to look at how to get these symbols from libraries online, since we can't have all these the codes for the symbols offhand. There are numerous symbols and then numerous entities as well. So I'm going to start with content. So to illustrate the symbols, I'm going to use the list, but before that I want to have a heading. I'm going to use a H2 for that, and here we're going to say this would be HTML entities and symbols. Alright, and let's create the list. We can use any list for this, or I would like to use an ordered list, and have the different type of symbols and entities as my list item. So the first we're going to be looking at smileys. This list item, we're going to have different smileys in this item. Alright, let's have another list. And in this category, we're going to have symbols like arrows. Next, okay, let's have mathematical symbols. Should be the last. Let's just have 4 contractions. All right. So here I'm going to use the different symbols using the HTML codes that can give us the symbols. But first, I want to show you all the way you can get symbols. So attached to the class lesson, there is a link to a repository where you can find different entities that you can use, different HTML entities that you can use on your HTML page. But here I want to also show you, so there are different libraries online, there are different websites that provide these symbols and entities. So you have to look for a secure one and one with good details of how to get them. So I have one here, which is HTML CSS JS.com, and here you can see that they have samples of smileys, different smileys, and they have categories for this, and also a search bar where if you're looking for a specific type of entity or symbol, you can search it in the search bar. And also they have for letters, maths, contractions, and so on, arrows. So you can see where I also got most of that categories from. So it goes on and on. So it depends on what you need for your page, and you can choose from any of them. So I just want to create something with them so we can see how they are displayed on the web page. So first we want to have a list of smileys. So all I have to do here is I have to click on the smiley, and it automatically copies the smiley. So I'm going to come to my code, and paste that. But I want to get the code, the HTML code for this. So I'm going to HTML. Now I already have some of these symbols known already, so I'm just going to reduce time. But this is one of the library you can use to get, so you can explore and look for the specific symbols, and you can see the codes that are required for them. So I won't be taking too much of time using. I'm just going to list out the ones that I have already. And so the symbols make use of different keys, just like the life lessons. Life lesson, we saw how to create different symbols and entities. So I'm going to use the different keys we have on our keyboard, since that we can't have this, we don't have them on our keyboard by default, so we have to create them. So this is the syntax for the symbols. So I'm going to save this, and let's see how this displays on the page. So this is for laughter, and I'm going to add more. So you don't have to memorize all of them. There are different libraries online you can use to get these symbols or smileys. So I just want to create some here. To have some more. So you always make sure you close each keys for a particular symbol with the semicolon, else the symbol will not display. think this 3 should do. We have different smileys now on the page. For sad, blush, happy, laughter. So let's see more symbols for arrows and how they are written. Save this. So I'm sure that this is going to work properly first. So this is for arrows, especially if you're creating a page where maybe you want to direct the users to look at a particular direction, or just maybe a mini instruction map on your page. So they have several reasons you might need the arrows entities or symbols on your page. All right, let's look at mathematical symbols. So how do we get the copy symbol that we often use for our footers? So when you go to different websites, you must have noticed that there is a copyright symbol usually at the footer. So that is one of the most used symbol that we often see on web pages. So I'm just going to put that here so we'll see how to get the copy symbol. So it's just the ampersand and the text copy, and you have the copy symbol. So there are different symbols to mathematical symbols that we can have on the page, and there are also libraries you can get this from. Okay. For the last list here, let's have punctuation marks, and let's have one for hyphen. So this is for hyphen, for different punctuation marks. Now they might not be often used, but there are scenarios where you have websites that this might be needed, where you don't want to use the key, the actual punctuation keys on your keyboard. Or let's say if you don't have such on a keyboard, you can always use these entities for that purpose as well. So these are for entities and symbols. Now let's look at counters. I'm going to create another heading here, and here we're going to look at counters, or I'm going to show you how to make these different headings we're going to be creating as counters. So let's look at one of the lessons we had during the week, and we learned how to upload videos on the web page. So I'm just going to do a quick sample here. and this is for multimedia. And iframes. So we introduced the multimedia and iframes lessons, the lesson videos, and they are just the simple ways that we can use to upload media content like videos, audios, and also for iframe, it's a simple way to incorporate or not basically incorporating or just to give a snip view of a web page, or if you have maybe an advert from a third-party source that you want to display on your web page, you can make use of the iframes. And for that, we've already seen how to upload videos on, which was well explained on the live lesson. So I'm just going to use another example to show how we can make use of iframes for this sample. So I'm going to make use of an iframe element, and here I want to use the school website. So we can have the school website displayed as an iframe on this page. I'm going to copy the link, and in my source attributes, I'm going to specify the link now to the website. So this could be any website, but you will have to follow the guidelines to third-party usage of websites. So here I'm using the school website, and I can specify in the width attributes the width of this iframe. So the width the frame or the border of the iframe is going to expand to. So for this, I want the size of 320, and for the height, I want 240. Then you can also use iframes to add videos, but it must be a link of a video, and you must also have the right to do that on your web page. So this is one way to you can add videos from maybe content delivering network to as well. So to reduce maybe the time the page was used to load the video content on your web page. But here now we use the iframe to add a snippet of the school website. So right here you can see the size we specified and the home page of the school website, and I can scroll just like I would if I open the school website on a new tab. Now let's also look at specificities and units in HTML. So let's have another heading. So I'm going to make these headings a counter, so we can see how we use counters on the page too as well, with different content examples, like unlike the class lesson. So here we want to have let's create what we're going to use to illustrate this. So I want to have a div, and in this div I'm going to have a class and an ID. So to begin with, if we recall from the class lesson, so if you maybe don't understand the calculations behind this, you can always refer back to the class lesson to see the calculations properly. So we looked at the importance of the class attributes, the ID, elements, and inline styles. So we looked at how which of them overrides the other. So previously we've talked about how to use styles, how to use the inline style to override any other style that has been specified in maybe the embedded style or the external style sheet. So the inline style takes more importance over the other styles you have on your embedded style sheets or your external style sheets. So that is still the same for the importance of classes, IDs, specificities we have for our CSS. So here we are going to look at we are going to look at an ID and a class to see how, and illustrate how one is more important than the other depending on the situation or scenario we use, using the calculations that we know already. So since we already know that the inline style overrides all, we're not going to be using an inline style for this example. So we want to see how others can be manipulated as well. So here we're going to have a class, and usually the class is less important than the ID. So the ID comes next after the inline style, and next is the class. So let's create a class here so we can illustrate this properly. So for this class, we're going to make this important class. And we're going to have an ID. And this ID will be important ID. So I'll just put the constants here. We're going to have a text that will be red. So let's say this text is red. And also we're going to be using the font size. We're going to be changing the font size to illustrate which one overrides the other. So we can say this text is red and the font size will be 20 px to the designated class. Alright, now we're going to see how we can manipulate this, the importance of the class, to make sure that the class displays or overrides the class styles overrides the styles for the ID. Because looking at the specific calculations, we know that the ID comes before the class, but I want to create a scenario where we can have the class styles overriding the ID class. So we'll do that in our CSS. Alright, so let's start creating the styles for this content. So first, I want to illustrate how to use the counters. So we already have content on the body, so we can easily body. We have the H2 coming 3 times. So let's make the H2 a counter whereby we can have them as sections. So first I'm going to create a class for the H2s. And I'll call them counter. I'm just going to copy this. Now let's create the counters. So I'm going to use the body. How counters usually work is that you want to have a container or an element, a parent element, and you want to count the elements or contents that are inside that container, that parent element. So we usually, if we're going to count the H2, we're going to count its parent elements, since we have all the H2 inside the body element. Or we could create a div. We can create a div and make sure that all the contents of the H2 are inside the div. So we can then specify that we want the counter to reset from the parent element. So let's try an example with the body elements. So we'll see how it works. So here I'm going to say that I want the body elements to have the counter reset. So this makes sure that the counter begins from the beginning. That's 0 for this instance. So we're going to have the counter reset, and then we specify the name of the counter. So we can have this as any specific name we want. So since we have them as different, and now I want to also set the counter for the content, and that's, we have a class called counter, and in that class, how do we make sure that these elements, the H2 elements, to make sure that the contents are displaying right before them, to specify that this is the section is going to count, the counter is going to display before them. So we use the pseudo elements selector, and we say we want it to be before. So you can as well choose after, you can choose before, either of them, depending on the way you want to present your counter. Now I want the contents, so we use the contents property to display contents on HTML. So the content property basically is a powerful CSS property that allows you to add content to an element without modifying the HTML structure. So it's like you just want to add maybe a text or image or even attributes to an element without modifying your HTML structure. So we can use this to add different things to a particular element. But here we are adding this counter, and we want it to display the way we're going to specify it is the way it's going to display right before this class counter, which we have in the H2s. So automatically it's going to be that we are creating this counter for all the H2. Since we have a class called counter inside the H2, that it will be styling, that will be applying these styles to all H2s. So the content that is one of the CS is the CSS property that we can use to do that. So here in the contents, we're going to specify how we want it to display. So first we want it to display the name we have given, and in a pair of quotes we specify the name, and its name is section. I'm going to make this section. And then we want to specify in the counter that we want this to be counted, and we use the value counter. And also specify the name, the counter, which is section. And then we want the display to also have a semicolon, a colon just after the name section. So we're going to have this in a pair of quotes, and we give the put the semicolon in between, just like we did for the name. So we want this to display first before the H2. We want the section that we have specifically added here to display before the H2. And we also want it to be counted. So this is going to give the numbers, and then we also want it to have the colon just after the name section. So another property that we want to specify in this, I should have that before. Come before or after, but I want it, in order that you can understand. So I want it to auto increment. So I want the section which I have given as the name to auto increment. So I'm just going to repeat the name here. So this is going to make sure that the name that I've given as my counter would auto increment with the number that is also specified in the counter, and it's also supposed to display the colon in front of the section. So the contents, this is one of the use of the contents. So I hope this works. I'm going to refresh my page. Let's see. Alright, so now we have it displayed just like we have specified in our CSS. So the counter reset is the property we want to always have in the parent element that will help to look for the elements that we specified the counter on. So the counter reset makes sure that it starts from 0. That starts from the beginning, not 0 specifically. That is going to reset the counter. So it makes sure that once we have any content that was specified counter, it's going to start from the beginning. And also the content, that the elements we want to count here, we make sure that we have the property auto increment to auto increment. So the counter increment is the property we use to make sure that the numbers, as we add them up, it's auto increment. So if we should have another section, or we have another H2 on the page, and I add this class counter to it, because I have specified in the class counter that I want it to auto increment, to auto count. So it's going to increase the number by 1, and that would be section 4. So the name section is just what the content, now what we specify in the content. Yes, we've given the name here section, but we have to specify how it displays on the elements we want to count. So the content here helps us to give that display properly. So just like I specified here, that I want it to be section, which is this section you see, and the counter should count this section, which is the number we have next, and then the colon that comes after, which is what we have here as well. So the space we have after the colon makes it possible for us to have space just after the colon as well. So the content helps us to do that. Now the content does not only help with counting, just like I said, it helps to add different type of content to the HTML page without modifying or changing it to in your HTML. So maybe if there's time, we can look at other ways we use content. So next, we want to look at the specific tool we have created here. We want to look at how to make sure that, let's say this is a scenario where we have class, we have an ID, and we want to make sure that the class overrides the ID. So to do that, we use the important rule, and here I am going to start first. Okay, let me make this counter have some space. Let's add some extra style to the counter so it displays properly. I want the font size. So this is also an opportunity to explain the different units we have in HTML. So we have been using TX as one of the units, but there are several units we have on HTML in HTML. So we can also try them out here. So for this font size, we won't be using PX. Let's look at how EM displays. So EM unit is equal to the font size of the elements. So the font size will be twice the default font size. So let's look at how that displays. So we're going to use 2EM. So there are different units, some specific for fonts, some for containers. So we're going to leave this as 2EM. And I want the margin at the bottom. Since the size of the H2 will be bigger. I'll save this and let's look at how this displays. Alright, so now you see that this is now usually bigger than the size of the heading. So it's times 2 equal to the original size of the heading now. So let's have the classes and ID, the class and ID we have created for our specificity. So first, let's look at the ID, since the ID usually is more important. Or we're going to look at the class first. So we have created the class called important class. And let's add a style. So we're going to make the color of the text to be let's use red, since I said red. We also want the font size to be 30 pixels. So this, now if we refresh the page, we're going to see the style that we have specified in the important class. So let's style the ID and see how it overrides the style we have specified in the class. Name is important ID. And for important ID, let's change the style. I want the color to be blue. And the font size should be smaller. This is 20 pixels. So we save this, and we see that the ID has override the styles for the class, because according to the specificity, the ID comes first and the class comes second. So the ID comes before the class. The inline style comes first. So now in this situation, let's look at how we can make this class override the ID styles. So to do that, we use the important rule for that, and it's just written as starting with an exclamation mark and the text important. This should be in Okay, so by doing this would make sure that the styles that we have, or the style that we want to override in this class, that wants it to override any other style that affects the colors anywhere else. It could be maybe an inline style, or just the elements that we've styled already, like we have here for the important ID. So by adding the important rule to it, it makes sure that the style would override any other style that has to do with this color, since we have it here in the color property. So now I refresh and it overrides the ID class, which was blue. So this is one way we can use to make sure that we enforce a particular style. Maybe if the style isn't displaying because of some styles that are not visible, like if you're using a content delivery network, let's say we are using a framework like the CSS framework, like Bootstrap, right? Like with not framework really, a content delivery network, Bootstrap, for example. and in the classes we already have styles, and you cannot access this or manipulate these styles because they are not in your HTML file. So in order for you to override the style, so just like here, let's assume that this is from the CDN that we have copied, and we can't access this. Since it's an ID, it's meant to be strong on specificity. So now, in order for us to make sure that the style we want, we may not want the font size to change. Maybe we want the font size to remain 20 pixels, but we want the color to change. So in order for us to do this, to make sure that it enforces the style we want, so we can use the important rule for that. So this is one very important way we can adjust our styles. Now there are also other scenarios too as well. So you may maybe have lots of styles on your code, and it's probably not your own code, and you just want to adjust something real quick to fix maybe a particular issue. So this is one way to test and see as well. All right, is there any question? Is there any question? I think we've covered most of it today because of time. We'll have to stop here. Are there any questions? Okay, so if there are no questions,
good afternoon, sir.
Okay, good afternoon.
I just want to reconfirm what you said about the superiority of classes and ID. In the order of importance, is the ID class having more importance than the class?
Yes, from the example I also illustrated here, you can see when I use the ID, I apply styles to the ID, it overrides the class.
The class, okay.
So which means it's more important than the class.
Okay.
And there are also other ways we can do this. We can also specify maybe if we want to increase. So you can refer back to the class lesson and see the calculations that were used. So there are particular value, mathematical value that are attached to these IDs and classes and elements. So for the inline, you can see that whenever we have an inline, it has an importance of 1000, and ID is 100, and then for class is 10, and the elements is 1. So you can also use the values to manipulate how you want your style to be important. Like, for example, if I have a class, and since the ID is 100, sorry, if I have a class and maybe I have okay, let's use elements. Since the ID is way more, the ID is 100, so the class is 10. So if I have an element and I want to make sure that the element overrides the class, the element is 1. So all I have to do is maybe include it here. So since I have an ID and the ID is 100, which is more than the class, I could also make sure that the element beside the particular element I have in this. So if we have any elements here, let's say we have a P element, this text was a P element, and I can specify here the element P, and this makes it 101. So which is more than the 10 we have for the class. But this is the basic as possible, I think we can understand. So using the importance rule is one way to override when we have the trouble of the ID coming before the class, and also maybe a style that we cannot access, that we don't know the specificity of that particular style. So you can use the important rule to override it as well. Okay. If there are no more questions, we can stop here. And always remember, you can reach out to me from the WhatsApp group. So I wish you all success in your assignments and a lovely weekend ahead. All right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.